Welcome to Open Range. I'm your host, Gary Emineth. Today we're going to be introducing Will Gardner, the realtor. We're going to talk about real estate. So many people, young people want to get into homes and they can't. We talk about financing. There's so many regulations coming out and just a number of things with laws changing related to realtors and buying and selling homes, first-time home buyers, programs the state has. Will Gardner is going to be joining us, and Will's going to be doing a regular show on Open Range talking about lots of things related to real estate, whether it's residential, commercial, just land, just a lot of information that we're going to be focusing on real estate. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Marlo Anderson will be joining us, and you're going to be looking at a lot of interesting things related to robots. Stay tuned.
This is the Tech Ranch.
So never before in humankind have we been grappling with two technologies coming together at the same time. So in the past, fire, the wheel, automobiles, the telephone, electricity, these were all singular type of technologies that we've used to move mankind forward. But right now, we have robots and artificial intelligence merging at the same time. So here at CES 2026, this is a sampling of some of the robots that were on display.
Volviendo conmigo. Nunca, ya no muestra más eso. No solo para ti. Solo si también lo puedo decir. Ya, está bueno, entonces voy a hacer todo.
Also, if you have a high sense AC in your house, I do.
그럼 이제 다음 공간으로 이동해 보도록 할게요.
A lottery ticket, which gives you a chance to win.
Yes. So I would say.
We're gonna try to move tone automatically. Hi, Kanda. Yeah.
But it's bad.
For Beck Television, I'm Marlo Anderson.
Welcome back to Open Range. We're going to be talking to Will Gardner, who's a realtor associate here in the Bismarck-Mandan area. Will and I go back a long time, and I wanted to introduce something of dealing with real estate a little bit more in depth. Just looking at different topics and subjects around the country as we look at things. We always want to look at how things are relevant to North Dakota. Will and I were chatting, and we just decided that Will's going to do a regular segment on real estate education. Not going to be here selling. If you need a broker or a realtor, I'm sure he'll be happy to help you out and accommodate that. But what I really wanted to do to help educate viewers on, there's a lot of changing on commissions and structures and cash and financing, interest rates, that I just think it's going to be an interesting segment that we'll introduce regularly. We're still trying to figure out when will be the exact time we'll do it, but we will be publishing and promoting that on Open Range. So Will Gardner, welcome to Open Range.
Gary, thanks for having me. Yes.
So Will, before we get started, I always like to have people get to know who we're talking to for the next half hour or so. So tell our viewers, who's Will Gardner?
Yeah, so I'm married with 7 kids, and I live right now in Mandan. It's where I lived for, I don't know, last 15 years. And I grew up in a small town and moved to Fargo, went to college, and then came back closer to my family. And real estate's been a big part of our family, part of our life. And so about 10 years ago, I decided this is what I want to do full time. So changed a little bit of what I originally started doing in software, and it's been a great blessing. I've really loved the change.
So Will, when I go back to when we had first met, I recall, I'm thinking off the top of my head here, I might be wrong, but Mike Lifford, who was a friend of mine, actually he's the one that told me about Derek Bolawa, the CEO of Beck, and said, you should do a show on Beck. But he had known Derek, and I had not met Derek. And anyway, I think I met you through Mike Lifford. Did you guys have kind of some tech stuff you had done at one point with you working with Mike and another gentleman, if I recall?
Yes, that's right. I met Mike when he was running for the U.S. Senate, and Mike was he was on the billboards in Fargo, and I remember, you know what, we really got to get this guy, and you know, I was politically involved, got to get him in office, and so that's how I met him, and then from him met you, Gary. And one of the things that in my first meetings with Mike is he needed somebody that was a tech guy, and so that was my role. I was huge into software. I still am today, but I really moved from the software space to you get a little older and you start to appreciate some of the physical parts of where we live, and that became more of a passion for me as time grew on, although, like I said, the software thing is still a big deal. But my wife and I, we purchased a couple homes, and I remember going to my first time home buyer class, the first time home buyer class that we had. And after I had been through that course, which I now to this day, this is what I love to do and love to teach, is these first-time homebuyer courses. I remember thinking that we could buy our house and then sell it and then buy it and sell it. Between the amount of money you make just fixing it up, as well as the market's growing, I looked at my wife and said, hey, we could buy 4 houses and then we would get one free. You buy and then you sell and buy and sell. And the unfortunate thing is when you have a lot more kids, then you need a lot more space. And so I don't have my last house for free, but it's certainly built equity up over the years. And that has been such a pillar of strength in our financial situation in our family. And that's why I couldn't sell anything, Gary. I could only sell things that I truly believe in. And when I am selling real estate, whether I'm helping buyers or helping sellers, I love what I do because I know I'm helping families, not just their financial situation, but also the security of having a home and a place to live, to make memories. That's not changing underneath their feet, that you don't have a landlord telling you what to do, or people running over the top of your head on the second floor, or just you can't improve your property. There's so many freedoms and there's so many great things that come from owning property that when I go out and I talk to people as first-time home buyers, I'm just love what I do. I'm so excited because it is so important for them to get into their first home financially and for security reasons.
Well, part of the reason this real estate segment matters to me, I was a realtor twice. I wrote the test twice. As soon as I turned 18 on the day after my 18th birthday, I applied to get my real estate license in Washburn, and I was a realtor. I passed my test, 18 years old, barely knew anything, but I wrote the test. And I learned I remember the real estate book was thick, but there was all these things about covenants and easements and all these things that I learned around at a very young age. And it helped me all through my life. And what prompted me, I was in Arizona for the last month and I was with a young guy, and he said to me, you've done all these companies and all these things. What would be one thing you would have done different, or that you think would be important, that would be something I could take with me? I said, the mistake I made is in real estate. I've had a lot of properties. I had a home in Colorado that I looked at that I bought for $275, sold for $350, and I looked at it when I was down there. $2 million today.
Don't even look.
I have a house in Monument, Colorado. I paid $315 for it back 25 years ago. I looked at it, $1.6 million. I'm going like, why would if I could have just kept a couple and leveraged them and rented them, but of course I had to feed my family and had to pay the mortgage for them when I was living in.
Right.
But I did buy my first apartment when I was 19 in Underwood, a fourplex. I was way over my head. No one helped me, but I was smart, I thought. But I was able to get out of it and didn't go through bankruptcy, didn't lose it, but it was a good learning lesson. But writing that test, my first year I sold $1 million worth of real estate back in 1977 or whatever year it was. It was a long time ago. And so all those experiences have shaped the way I do business, the way I bought companies, the way I started companies, because there's all these contracts and laws and words matter. So that's why I'm excited about you doing what you're going to do, because I think this becomes an educational format where people just need to learn how to deal with real estate, because it's changing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Just today, just thinking that it changed. Just in the last couple weeks now, as a real estate industry, we are changing. There's one headline I'll tease you with is that cash may no longer be king when it comes to making an offer, for getting offers as a seller is starting to be problematic. And so these are some of the headlines that I'm thinking about, Gary, that I think listeners and viewers they're gonna want to know more about what that means and why. So for example, there's what's called FinCEN, is this new, that the federal government is implementing this FinCEN requirements that make it so that if you're the seller of property, you would have to disclose a lot more information than you typically would have. So if you're a very private seller, this is going to affect you. So this is related to, I don't know if you remember BOI, but it's where you have to identify yourself as who you are. You can't just hide behind the corporate shield. You have to actually explain who you are. And so there's things like that in the industry that they're coming around full circle and they're closing the loop. So the reason why they have this identification thing, whether you agree with it or not, is people from other countries or from nefarious groups that are trying to take advantage of our American dollar and American system, they're coming in with dirty money from other countries. Dirty meaning drugs, it could be, I don't even know all the things that they come up with. I'm just stick with drugs, but your mind can run wild in what there is. So they come in, they buy property here, and they clean the money by buying property, so they're laundering the money. And so they'll buy the property, they'll sit on it, they may even take a loss on the property, they don't care. They'll go down to Manhattan, they'll buy a condo for $20 million, it may be worth 18, they don't care. They want to get that money clean, sitting in a property. Then when they pull it out, it'll be clean, it'll be laundered. And so the government sees this, they've put in some, anyway, long story short, it's going to affect how you're going to sell properties. I can go into that more detail later on, but that's something, there's issues like that, Gary, as the show progresses, that I think this is just one out of many things.
Well, one of the things I think that matters, a lot of North Dakotans, okay, I'm on Social Security today, that doesn't pay all my bills, but a lot of people my age, classmates, are now buying property in Arizona. So just because someone is, hey, I got my house paid for, I'm retired, or whatever their situation is, this doesn't matter to me. This information matters because I might be wanting to have a second home in Arizona, or I might be deciding to sell my home. So all these data points that you're going to be talking about in these various segments, I think are very important to it. And I'll give an example what's happened in Arizona. There's been so many properties where corporations have bought homes, and they're buying homes and paying cash for it, and they don't even care about an inspection. So the average young couple, like my son and daughter-in-law just bought a home in Tucson, if they're competing against these corporations that come in, make an offer, pay cash for it because they're willing to build these conglomerates, and now Trump has just announced he's going to try to shut that down or put some limit on it. Is it 20 homes? But I read one company during COVID, one company when housing was at its peak, when they were struggling, rates were going up, one company was buying 80 homes a week. And when that happens, what does it do to the young couple or a family that wants to upgrade? In your case, 7 kids, and you maybe had 4, and you're going to say, well, that puts you out of the market because you have contingencies. I got to get financing. Those are the kind of things that happen. And so talk a little bit further about this whole idea of this disclosure. Just give us a little bit more because in a sense, I can see where dirty money gets laundered, to get all that. But even the corporations who's behind buying all these homes, I think matters, because you live in a neighborhood and all of a sudden somebody comes in and buys 42 homes in the neighborhood and it messes things up.
Yeah, and I'm sure down in Phoenix, they're going to have a lot more of that than up here. But what I've seen here, matter of fact, just last week, I just had a deal go through where a guy calls me on Friday night, says, hey, I want to buy your property that you got listed, and we don't need an inspection. So we do have that here. That isn't just fairy tale. It does happen here in Bismarck. And it does make you question a lot. It was very timely with the FinCEN requirements that are going to be coming in place. I believe it's March 1st is when they're currently going to be slated to be put in. And that's going to require sellers and buyers to openly disclose exactly who they are. It'll in particular affect if you buy and sell with a corporate name. That will be a big red flag. And if you're a very private seller, a private buyer, that's going to be a problem because it's going to make you give more information than you used to. I don't want to totally scare everybody, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult than we used to. And you see someone like that coming to buy versus someone that's a first-time home buyer and they love your house and they're going to, they might have to do financing. That's going to be more appealing in the future, I think, than a big corporate buyer that comes in. If the purchase price is relatively the same, there's going to be buyers, there are going to be sellers going to be like, you know what, I don't care if I have to put up with a little more of a financial process. I would rather deal with that person than to have to deal with some of these FinCEN requirements.
Well, we're going to, in the next segment, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the subjects that you're going to try to cover that be relevant. We'll bounce some things back a little bit so that the viewer knows when you're coming on, these are going to be areas and things that you will do. We'll try to promote in advance what some of those subjects would be. But before we go into the next segment, I want to talk a little bit about, tell us a little bit about your real estate, your company you work for, what you do, what properties you do, how much geography you cover, just to give people a breath, not necessarily to promote Will Gardner, broker associate, but for people to understand your depth of knowledge and areas that you got some really hands-on, because I think when you and I text last week about doing the show, you're on your way to Williston. And so talk a little bit about your business that way.
Yeah, I actually did a closing up in Williston. A lot of my market is usually in Bismarck-Mandan area, but I have been traveling the state, especially I have clients that I just want to take care of. If I have a relationship with someone, I'm not transactional, I'm a relationship guy. So you get to know me, I take care of you no matter where you are in the state. And there are places across the state that don't have as much representation or the level that people are looking for and the quality. So that's why I chose to work at Century 21. Like I said, I'm not necessarily trying to brand whatever, but I could hang my license anywhere. I'm a broker. I could go out and start my own business, but I want to focus on my clients. I don't want to focus on growing a business full of realtors. My strength is in all the knowledge I have with negotiating with buyers and sellers, helping my clients and representing them. That's the most important thing for me. And I've done that statewide, but of course my focus here in Bismarck that's probably where my bread and butter is. There are 3 categories that I see us talking over the next, however long we do this for the next year or whatever, is that land, commercial, and residential. Honestly, I do like residential the most. I love getting new homeowners into homes. I also like the complexity and the dynamic of some of the estates. So if you have an estate and you're selling a property and you have multiple family members, it can be extremely difficult to navigate those and those relationships.
So we're going to dig into that a little bit further because those are important subjects that we need to address. I'm looking forward to it. I think the viewers are as well. So we've been talking to Will Gardner, broker associate here from the Bismarck-Mandan area. Will, and some of them are looking for investments. And I think one of the investment decisions I made in my life at a young age was I bought property when I was young, but I didn't retain it. I didn't understand leveraging assets enough. When you were talking about fixing them up. Now, if I was a handy guy like my brother, I might have been more inclined to do it. Everything I had to do, I had to get hired, get something done. So let's talk a little bit about some things that could be of interest to viewers. And by the way, if any of you out there as viewers want to pose questions to Will, you can email me, Gary at openrangetv.com. And I will make sure that they get them to Will in advance or we can cover them on future shows because, Will, I think there's so many things that we could cover. Now just think about financing. Somebody's a first-time home buyer, young couple, or maybe my house is paid for and I want to buy a second one in Arizona or someplace. They need questions. Should they finance it? Those are all questions that everything changes. And so in finance, I talked a little bit about some things that would be of interest to people.
Yeah, on the financing side, so one of the things in financing that I think is pretty interesting is there's so many different types of financing that you can have. So for example, obviously people know the difference between cash and getting a loan and financing, but there's also within financing, the financing umbrella, there's so many different directions you can go. And so one of the things that I do as an agent and other agents do, this is not just me, but I sit down and have a consult with my clients and I help them understand the different options if you're a buyer, what you should be looking for financing. So we can go, for example, to conventional financing, FHA, VA, USD. So we have all of those. But then on top of that, and think about these as being like layers. So you have the different types of loan, but then there are also the programs out there that are a secondary layer. So for example, when you hear people talk about the first-time home buyer program, that's the North Dakota Housing, NDHFA. So the acronym makes it sound boring, but the money is real and the money is really good for first-time home buyers. So you really want to take advantage of that. And so one of the things that we can talk about more in later shows or whatever is how the different financing mechanisms will work. In addition to the North Dakota Housing stuff, there's just a really amazing program, and what they do to get young people into homes and stay in North Dakota is just awesome. I love it. But in addition to that, there are some other things that people don't usually consider that may be of interest. So for example, there are a contract for deed is a separate type, and that would be something that'd be very interesting sometime to go into as well in a future program, and what that all entails and the advantages and disadvantages of that. So there's a whole, like you said, there's a whole financing piece to this that I think would be.
Well, and I think, Will, I even think about the VA program for veterans. I think about programs that are related to your local bank. I have a niece whose husband's a finance broker, and they have loans from all these different companies. But if I live in a rural town, maybe I want to work with my local bank. What are the advantages of that? So I think one of the things I'm thinking I would be excited about is for you to have a banker on. Dale Polke's a regular on. Beck, great supporter. Beck, he could talk about finance related to homes, and so we cover stuff like that. So let's talk about, just to pivot a little bit, because I want to just give the viewers some things that I think you're going to drill down on. Sometimes I will be talking to you, and sometimes you're going to be sitting in my chair. That's what my hope is. That's my goal anyway. But as an example, somebody looking to buy a house. I saw the real estate commission structure changed. In my old days, when I sold real estate many years ago, commercial had about a 10% commission, residential was 6%. Maybe if it's a new home or a higher price, it might be 5%. But then I saw the law just change. The courts threw something out where now you got broker commission that go to the broker, come to the seller, goes to the buyer. Everybody pays. It's like, what? I mean, so give us just a little bit of a smidgen of what's changed in the last year, so viewers can go, oh yeah, I need to make sure I watch that one.
It's funny you brought it up, Gary, because it has taken me a long time to understand what has happened, what the rules, because when the rules quote unquote changed, to be quite honest, they really didn't change. The rules have always been that we cannot be a monopoly as realtors. We cannot set prices. So whatever that commission is out there, I won't say it because obviously we're broadcasting, so I'm not going to give some sample numbers of commissions, but I know what we charge at Century 21. And so that commission that we charge is to help the seller sell the house. And sometimes what has happened is that I think over the years there's been this misconception that there's an automatic commission set. And that was what the lawsuit and the federal government wanted to stop. They said, no, there is not a set commission. And I'll tell you, like straight up, that if I'm going to a rural community and I have a trailer house, a $50,000 trailer house, I'm not listing that property for, say, what I charge for a regular listing is 6% of the purchase price. I need to charge more because it's just going to take a lot more to sell it. So commissions have never been set. There's been some people will just see common percentages, and so they'll just make some assumptions. And really, you want to make sure that you're getting what you want in a realtor. Some realtors may not be worth what they're charging, and some may be worth more than what they're charging, right? So that's for the consumer to decide. And what has changed though is, I will say the one thing that's changed is now when you look at a home, the lawsuit and the federal government got together and stipulated to the realtors saying, if you show a home, you must have a contract with the buyer, unless it's the listing agent. So if I'm listing a home, and someone calls and wants to look at the property that I'm listing, then I can show them the property without a showing agreement or a buyer agency agreement. But if you are calling up your favorite realtor, just so you know, when they show you that house, they are required by the rules and the laws set up with the lawsuit. It's not a law, but essentially it's good because you have to abide by it, that they have to get a contract with the realtor before the realtor can show you that house. And so there's some different things that you don't have to necessarily get in a buyer agency agreement. You don't have to actually yet agree. We have some ways where we can have a contract that is a temporary Band-Aid, because sometimes, Gary, you just want to get in a house. You don't really care about writing an offer that day. You may not even be knowing if you're even interested in buying a house in the first place. So that was one of the things with the realtor was like, what do you mean we need to sign contracts? We just met these people, and the people are like, we just met this realtor. We don't want to, or maybe it's a long time friend, but you're not ready to get into contracts because you don't know. And so we have what's called a showing agreement, and basically it says, we'll show you this house, and in your turn, you're going to consider me as an agent.
I think those are so important, because that's the point I was getting at. The things are changing so much, and the reality is people might buy and sell half a dozen homes in their lifetime. They don't, and some people maybe do 1 or 2, but we're moving towards a lot of people are renting. For a lot of the younger people having a hard time getting into homes, and there's just a ton of things that we'll do a whole nother show on commission, because I just think of, you get down to the end and you're between a buyer and a seller, and you could say to the broker person, hey, can you cut some of that commission so I can get my number? Those are all negotiable, but I would like to have some shows really digging into what that means, because you're right, it isn't concrete, and even though it's in the agreement, everything's negotiable.
Now, what I'll say is this: just over the last year, for example, I think let's say 95, 97% of the offers that I wrote for my buyers, the sellers did pay their commission.
So that's important statistic. So over 90%. So it's still like the old days. Okay, let's pivot a little bit. We got a few more minutes. Zillow, it changed everything. I'm driving down the road. Oh, let me look at the price of this house. So how has Zillow changed the way people look at houses, and even you're interacting with buyers and sellers?
Yes. Sometimes Zillow is a challenge, right? Because sometimes they get expectations set either negatively or positively before you even start to get in the house. And I talk to the seller and I say, Mr. Seller, your house is worth X, right? They're like, but Zillow said it's worth Y. And usually we have this conversation where I have to explain to them that Zillow hasn't walked through your house. Zillow doesn't know that you've made some updates to your home or that there's some issues that are going to negatively affect your sale. There is some calculations they do with square footage. Really, that's a very poor indicator of the true value of your house. That's why you always have to have a professional come in there and give you an idea of what you're looking at. And so that's why one of the things that we struggle with is trying to actually combat some of that. Now, Zillow actually seems, in just empirical evidence, just from what I've done, since you've asked the question, I've seen that Zillow tends to be a little bit less than what we come in for the list price. I think that helps a little bit gain expectations from some of the sellers, because you don't want to go into a seller's house and they think their house is worth $550,000 and you have to come and tell them it's worth $480,000, right?
Yeah.
And I think Zillow is, I think they must be getting their formulas a little better, closer. But when you put a number in somebody's head, it is very hard to get a number out of their head.
Boy, that's a great observation. And I've heard it 100 times where someone's looking at selling their home and they say, down the street, I saw so-and-so got $450,000 and so mine's worth $475,000. Right. I got 100 more square feet. Or I redid my bathroom or my kitchen.
And they don't tell you all the negative things. They just do.
and they haven't even been in the neighbor's house. They just compared to.
That's right.
But I think the thing that I want to talk a little bit about, just related to commission. So you got a house sell for $500,000, 6% commission. Person goes, $30,000. You sold it 2 days later. You made $30,000. And the reality is that might have sold in 2 days because a realtor was involved, because there was things going on. It helped, maybe got a higher price for the house. And the fact that I only bought 1 or 2 or 4 houses in my lifetime as an example, there's things that you just don't know, that you can get dinged 20, 30, 40,000 by not disclosing things. And realtors do earn their money most of the time.
Look, when I first got into real estate, I thought I'll have something on the side, I'll make some side income, and it can't be that hard, right? I would think every profession, you think, it can't be that hard. Gary, you're a talk show host. I can't be that hard. You come up here and shaking.
They know this is the amateur hour most days, and I never know what I'm going to come up with.
But that was the thing that it took me a while to really appreciate all the depth that we go into, that everything we cross our T's, dot our I's, that all that stuff is so important. One of the things I love being at where I work at Century 21 is it's really important for us to have the depth that we do at Century 21, because we have not only very large office, I think we have the largest office in the state, and more than 100 agents just in Century 21. I'm number 3 in the state last year. So that is something that I have an enormous amount of resources for, and that's why I stay there instead of branching off on my own, is because at any drop of the hat, I can call 5, 6, 7 brokers who've been in the business for a very long time, because I can guarantee you, even with all the experience I've had over the last 10 years and the hundreds and hundreds of closings that I've had, it is just amazing how we come across very different, unique scenarios, or scenarios that don't happen once a year. They don't happen very often, and having all the resources, all the brain power, that is so important. And my broker once told me, she said, you don't really know that you need a realtor until you really know you need a realtor. And by that time, it's too late, and it's like building a house and then making a mistake in the foundation. And you got this beautiful house, but the foundation has issues, and everything you built up above it is now in question and shaky, and it's just a mess.
So, Will, I think we got about a minute to go, finish up this segment, but one of my thoughts is topics that we'll cover: financing, listing a house, selling a house, buying a house, neighborhood versus in town, rural versus city. Yep. Subject, other top of the year,
and fun stories.
Yeah.
You won't talk about names, right? I won't give you any situations. Be very high level, but some of the stories that I'm going to talk about are just they're funny. You can't believe they have happened. So it's going to be, and we're going to talk about the different trends in seasonality. So right now, for example, this is a great time to buy land because you're getting ready for construction season. So you'll find so if you got land you need to sell, this is a good time to sell. There's good time to buy. It can be sometimes when it's quiet, when there's not a lot of competition. So we can talk about some of those seasonality.
There are so many subjects that I can see that you're going to be a combination of you sitting here and bringing in guests and you and I chatting, because there's so many things in my head I may want to pivot and ask questions for you on. So I appreciate you. We're going to have it on. We'll try to get a regular segment. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you.
We've been talking to Will Gardner.